In his farewell address to Congress, Dwight Eisenhower warned against the dangers of privatizing the military, believing that it would undermine the safety, security, and standing of the armed forces. Fast forward to today, and you realize those fears really weren't unfounded. Companies like Blackwater operate in global hotspots all around the world, but the chaos that they wreak really damage the armed forces' image. But this is neither a history lesson or a current events lecture. This is the latest action game from EA Games. This is Army of Two. Army of Two focuses on Tyson Rios and Elliot Salem, two Army Rangers that eventually joined up with the Security and Strategy Corporation, or SSC, a huge private military corporation. The story covers about 16 years and is a tale of loyalty and money that eventually turns into betrayal, conspiracy, and revenge that both Salem and Rios fight their way through. Salem and Rios aren't your typical soldier or mercenary. They're heavily armed and very, very skilled. They also go into combat with a huge selection of weapons, with everything from pistols to chain guns, RPGs to shotguns. They're pretty much packing a very, very small arsenal. Now, while it might seem like a basic run-and-gun game, that's not really the focus of Army of Two. Instead, the primary focus is something called aggro. What is aggro? It's essentially gaining the attention of your enemies on the battlefield. The more aggro that you wind up drawing by firing these large guns, the more attention you draw, which allows your partner to then run around, eliminate targets stealthily, and potentially even get a better position to flank your opponents. Draw enough aggro and you enter what's known as an overkill state, where you can perform much more damage and kill a lot more enemies in a smaller amount of time. This is going to be especially key when it comes to the three kind of enemies that you'll try to eliminate. Since flanking is the primary tactic that you're using, you're pretty much always in a sense of advancing, retreating, and regrouping. One of those things that you're doing as you push forward through the battlefield. Now obviously the easiest way that you can gain aggro is running straight forward, but that's probably going to wind up getting you killed. Instead you need to use cover intelligently. The aggro system also highlights one of the main objectives of the game, which is that you're not going to go at this alone. You're not an army of one, because if you win out in the middle of a firefight, you pretty much get capped really, really easily. Instead, what you need to do is rely on help from your partner to do different flanking maneuvers, or draw somebody's fire so you can go up and perform a melee attack like a chokeslam or an elbow drop on somebody. As a result, you'll find a lot more co-op moves that you're kind of going to start to rely on, such as sniping maneuvers to eliminate gas tanks, or ways to take out sentries that are placed in high-up towers. You'll also find that you'll have to go into what's called back-to-back positions, where both of you cover each other to maximize your firepower in what's essentially a bullet time moment. After you accomplish your goals, you get money, which you can use to upgrade your weapons. Since Rios and Salem walk into a fight with primary, secondary, special weapons, and grenades, that gives you a ton of options that you can then upgrade. You have multiple options available to you, such as changing out barrels, swapping stocks, getting increased cartridges or magazines, or even pimping out your gun. The ability to modify weapons like this is pretty unique, and it's one of those things that really is going to stand out, especially when you walk onto the battlefield carrying something that probably no one's ever seen before. While the game obviously places a large emphasis on co-op play, you will find that the single-player partner AI does leave you wishing for a little bit more. It's decent, don't get me wrong. It will do what you need it to do for the most part, which makes playing through the single-player experience relatively enjoyable. There are also a few times where the co-op action moments that you really come to rely on are kind of minimized. What's more, back-to-back sections are pretty much triggered automatically, so you never really get that sense that you are deciding when you need to have that element happen. Part of the problem with that is that it kind of removes the control away from you, which you won't really find if you play a multiplayer game with a friend that actually knows what they're doing. In this, a lot of the AI issues kind of fade away, and you have the ability to come up with new tactics and new approaches to the battlefield and to your enemies in general, which makes the game a lot more appealing and a lot more enjoyable. This is really borne out with multiplayer because of all the options that Army of Two provides you. You can either play split screen or with public and private co-op matches. You can also enter a multiplayer section where you can enter one of 4 different mode types, such as Warzone, which spawns enemy targets that you either need to defend or destroy, Extractions, where you need to collect allies or POWs and bring them to a safe zone, Bounties, where you just eliminate targets or assassinate enemy leaders. Overall, what you'll probably find though is that you're spending a lot more time with the co-op side and the multiplayer side of the game than the single player campaign, which is relatively short and will last you only about 6 to 8 hours or so. Once you've beaten it once or twice, there really isn't that much of a reason to go back in and replay it. Co-op is obviously the most enjoyable part of Army of Two, much more so than the shallow single-player experience. But even with that flaw, you'll still find the enjoyable, fun experience to be had with Army of Two.